What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, presented by Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL. And it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And join me to do just that. Very excited to say, Yahoo Fantasy contributor Chris Allen. Chris, what's going on, buddy?
I mean, this is the type of the season that we're ready for, man, because I don't know about you, and I'll pose it to the rest of the listeners right now, is what would y'all be rather doing right now? Would y'all rather be talking about receivers and quarterbacks running routes on air and throwing against nobody? I would assume people would be wanting to gear up for their drafts. Would they rather be having the debate about the legacy of Cam Newton versus Jalen Hurts? I would also say no. Nobody wants to get into that discourse anymore. We want to talk about stuff that's actually going to be going on the field. And we've got live action coming up for us in the next couple of days. Preseason is upon us. Just past the Hall of Fame game, we get to talk about things that are actually going to matter for the 2025 season. So no, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm ready to talk ball and talk drafting and what we can expect for the 2025 season, man.
Absolutely, man. August is here. We are in the thick of it. Things are happening. Preseason games are going to be happening here very soon. Your drafts are going to be happening here very soon. As you all know, we are now live every Sunday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern through draft season, through the whole damn regular season on our brand new YouTube channel. So be sure to like and subscribe. We have the content calendar up here. We are still squarely in the middle of strategy week. And Chris, I thought it'd be great to have you on to go over the annual publication that I put out, my 2025 draft blueprint for success. I'm going to have you kind of heat check me on some of the 5 most important takeaways from the piece. Also get your thoughts on, maybe some areas I might have missed, because I'm an idiot. I don't know everything. You're going to help me fill in some of the gaps here to really supplement the 9,000 word article that I put out on this. I mean, it's like I don't talk enough here on this podcast that we're live every day. No, I have a few more things to write out. So let's get right into it here, Chris. Let's get into draft blueprint number 1 for success. Mm-hmm. Invest in great ecosystems. People that listen to the show know ecosystem is a drink word. Sometimes winning in fantasy, it's all about hoarding the players from the best ecosystems. One of my favorite examples that I come back to all the time. Remember the 2013 Peyton Manning Denver Broncos, where Julius Thomas was the best late round tight end you could make. Peyton Manning threw a bajillion touchdowns. You stack up Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker, you won your damn fantasy league, right? Like that comes so again, sometimes all it takes is getting the right ecosystem. So we're going to try to dive into some here, Chris, that we might like. Did you have any 2013 Denver Broncos that season?
Oh man, yeah, and I didn't get Peyton Manning, but I did have DT on my roster. Rest in peace to one of the greater wide receivers of that era. And yes, having him on my squad was just one of those set it and forget it. It didn't even matter. You knew that the opportunity was going to come for him. The target's going to be there, the yards, and of course the touchdowns as well. So that was one of those teams where you knew once you set your lineup each week that you didn't have to worry about anything else. And I know a couple of folks, especially once we caught on to how prolific that offense was going to be, that they tried to trade for more players like from the Broncos. And of course, I see Noshawn Moreno up there as well. Still remember that video of him with the crying thing and all that they had, like with the excessive crying and all that stuff. It was just crazy that throughout that entire season. But yeah, if you can wind up securing one of those, understanding what those offenses are and also securing some of the players off of it, you've got it made in the shade and you're ready to at least get into the playoffs for your fantasy league.
Man, I forgot that Wes Welker was on that team and caught 10 touchdowns. Like how
that's crazy.
That? That's so random, but I absolutely love it. Again, like what makes a great fantasy ecosystem, we know the basics, right? Great players, great play callers, innovation from the offense really helps. That's especially, I mean, the league has changed so much since that 2013 Denver Broncos season where it was just spread and shred. Like now we're talking about these condensed offenses with motion, the power slot receivers, all of that. But this year, dear listeners, the thing we are going to hammer over the head here, it's offensive lines. It just gets overlooked every single year that a great offensive line can really take it to another level from a fantasy ecosystem perspective. I'll throw out 5 here, Chris, that I think are pretty obvious from last year, right? Like Eagles, Lions, Bills, Ravens, and Buccaneers, man. Like the Buccaneers are a great example of they were one of the best value offenses in the NFL last year, Chris, because you add Graham Barton in the mix at center, who was just an instant impact rookie. You get Cody Mock in his second year. He develops. Luke Gadecki takes a step forward. So, yes, like Chris Godwin is awesome. Last year, he was the second best fantasy wide receiver before he got hurt. Mike Evans is still doing the damn thing. Bucky Irving is an extremely talented running back. But it's that offensive line that, again, even going into this year, Tristan Wirfs' injury is huge. That's obviously a red flag. But by and large, like this should still be one of the better offensive lines as they bring back all 5 starters, which makes me want to invest in some Buccaneers this year.
100%. And I think that's where having the protection unit in place for Baker Mayfield is one of the reasons why a lot of folks will still want to draft Baker in part of the early rounds. Because if you look at a lot of the statistics surrounding Baker, you would say he's one of the prime candidates for regression. If you look at his, let's say, his touchdown rate or how many touchdowns he was throwing based off of the number of dropbacks, you would see that his around 7% touchdown rate from 2024 is one of the best in his career. Also, the rushing that he had last year. We hadn't really seen much of the scrambling or seeing Baker boogie down the field as much, at least until he was back in Cleveland. But still, seeing a lot of that become a part of his game in 2024 was also kind of an outlier. But a lot of those components that we can put into the fantasy production for Baker from 2024, we don't really are concerned about a lot of that stepping back because he still has a lot of the surrounding cast required for him to at least attain the same heights that we saw in 2024. Still has a lot of the protection unit. And of course, the wide receivers, like you mentioned, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, let's hope he comes back at some point throughout the season. But of course, Emeka Ibuka and Jalen McMillan. All the pieces are there, not just the pass catchers, but also the protective unit around him to make sure that he's still upright and able to navigate a lot of the defenses and hit some of those pass catchers. So I'm with you. I see the scenario where that offensive line allows a lot of that offense to continue doing what it's doing, despite the fact that they lost one of the better play callers in the league and Liam Cohen to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I think, look, losing Liam Cohen's not good, right? Josh Grizzard was a part of the offense last year. He was the passing game coordinator. He apparently had a big hand in some of the third down passing concepts. So that continuity should be good, but I feel like if the line can stay strong, that might be an even bigger detail than the play caller. I also meant to throw out the Broncos here as a unit. Again, the 2020 Broncos, one of the best pass protection units in the league, and they were a top 10 unit in yards before contact per carry with their running back runs. Not Bo Nick scrambles, like pure running back runs, but they were 28th in yards after contact with their running back runs. So again, when you're trying to boost up like an RJ Harvey, or maybe you want to take the shot on J.K. Dobbins, the fact that that's an offensive line that we should trust, that we should believe in, brought back a lot of their starters this year as well, brought back all 5 starters as a matter of fact. We're talking about, okay, now we can feel pretty good about like breaking ties in favor of an RJ Harvey. But let's talk about some units that might be a little under the radar, or might be, maybe people are sleeping on them. I listed a bunch out with Daigle last week that I think improved in the offseason. I want to hear some ones from you, Chris, that you think people should be paying attention to in terms of offensive lines benefiting some really good ecosystems.
So the one that sticks out to me is the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, their offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford, he's been able to put together a pretty decent unit over the past couple of seasons. They're going to be returning 4 or 5 starters. And of course, the entirety of the fantasy production for the Falcons really hinges around, well, what will we see out of Michael Penix? And we saw just him in 3 starts in 2024. He's able to push the ball downfield, at least relative to what we saw out of Kirk Cousins throughout the majority of the season. And of course, his aggression, his ability to have that 9-10 yard average depth of target, and also being able to funnel a lot of those looks to a wide receiver like Drake London, was how we saw part of the breakout that we'd always wanted to see from London, but also just seeing that passing game evolve into what we were hoping we would see, a lot of the Sean McVay type concepts coming over from Zach Robinson when he came over with the Rams. So I can see a scenario where having a more, I would say, cohesive unit in front of Penix will allow him to continue to push the ball downfield. Of course, Drake London, we're already seeing him as a, let's say, second round staple. So in that high end wide receiver 1 type territory. But if we can see Michael Penix continue to have that aggression, still want to be some of that high flying attack that we saw in 2024, we might talk about him later, but could this finally be the year? And I'm just going to throw it out there right now. Could this be the year we see Kyle Pitts get back to where we want him to be from a tight end standpoint? I'm throwing it out there. Okay. I'm just throwing it out there for right now. But at the very least, if this offensive line allows Michael Penix to stay upright and push the ball downfield, the entirety of the Falcons offense should be able to benefit from it.
I totally agree with you. I'm really high on this ecosystem. Like, I think this could be one of those teams that really launches itself up the offensive just rankings, right? Especially because I don't know about you, buddy. I still don't have any faith in that defense. I think they're going to be like, we'll see. James Pierce, Jalen Walker, these young guys, but those are light defensive linemen. They're going to get run over by the rushing attack. So like, I think this is a team that's constantly going to be chasing points. And I don't know. I think I saw enough from Michael Penix to be cautiously optimistic, like intrigued this year. It's just, again, it's 3 games. We didn't see too much of him, and they were admittedly against some bad defenses. But I'm really intrigued with like what Zach Robinson can build. If you can't tell, I'm building up to the Kyle Pitts thing here. I'm trying to fortify myself to get up into this conversation. You got, bro. You just threw him out there. You got to ease into the Kyle Pitts discussion.
That's right.
Like, warm it up here a little bit, man. No, but
I'm coming in hot
for this whole offensive ecosystem. Again, I think that Zach Robinson showed pretty well in year 1, and talked about this with Scott yesterday. I'm interested to see if they can add more gap scheme runs, if they can do some more vertical pass concepts, deeper out routes with Drake London. That fits well with Michael Penix's game. We saw that last year, and that brings me back to Pitts. What's interesting about Pitts is that if you look at the wide receivers right now, Darnell Mooney is already hurt. That's not great, because this is Drake London's a dude. I said this to Scott yesterday, Chris. I would be comfortable clicking Drake London at like 11th overall. I'm very high on him. I think he's a first round fantasy pick.
All right.
For the rest of the guys here, like Ray McLeod, Casey Washington, day 3 draft pick in 2024, I think Pitts can play like a true, real wide receiver role for this team, as like mostly a slot receiver. And he's honestly going to kind of have to, because in this system, he can't play inline tight end because he's not a net positive blocker. So do you have enough faith in him being deployed as kind of like, in almost some of the ways that Drake London was deployed last year, as more of like a power slot receiver than you do as a true tight end? I think that's the question.
I think that's the case. And to me, the way that Pitts has been deployed on the field in previous years, it seemed like a stylistic mismatch with the quarterbacks that he was paired with. Because think about the guys that he had. I mean, he had Matt Ryan in the twilight of his career, and then it was Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke with his pop gun arm, and then, of course, now we see also Desmond Ridder, and then now we see Michael Penix. And now think about how the contrast the styles for each of those quarterbacks versus Michael Penix. Most of those guys, they do try and keep it short in intermediate parts of the field. And in just those 3 games we saw in 2024 from Penix, he was gripping and ripping it, bro. Like, he was ready to throw it downfield and take a lot of those hole shots, whether it was to Darnell Mooney for at least 1 game when Mooney was healthy, and of course those shots to Drake London as well. So with Kyle Pitts averaging around like 10, 11, 12 yards per reception over the first like 3-4 years, I can see his deployment matching better with Michael Penix than where we've seen him at in previous seasons. So I think at least that matchup alone gives me at least a bit more optimism about a guy like Pitts, whereas beforehand, no, he was never going to fit with Kirk Cousins, especially with the condition that we saw Kirk Cousins be in for the first 10, 14 weeks of the season. But now with Penix, and now if we can see him start to throw the ball downfield a bit more, that fits more in line with what Pitts can be as a receiver.
2 things here. Number 1, I can't believe you Trojan horsed a Kyle Pitts discussion into the offensive line section of this podcast. Number 2, I would bet my salary that Aaron, our social guy here, our excellent social media editor here at Yahoo Fantasy, is clipping this Kyle Pitts section for Twitter. I would bet my freaking salary on it, because Kyle Pitts just gets engagement on social media.
All the time.
So but I will say, in the next segment, we're going to talk about guys, or excuse me, the third segment, we're going to talk about guys that you can't totally write off. And I do kind of think that Pitts, we can maybe squeeze him into that conversation as somebody that maybe we shouldn't totally write off yet. I think it would be foolish to assume it just can never happen, because he has shown us good play in the NFL before. There's been injuries. I think that's the biggest thing, but he has shown us good play in the NFL before. So I'm willing to let you keep the candle lit here. Give me another offensive line that you think folks might be underrating that we should watch here in 2025 that could boost an underrated ecosystem.
I would say the Colts, that one instantly sticks out to me as one that if everything goes right, and it's probably a 3 or 4 leg parlay that you're trying to play for the Colts as of right now, because let's say the protection is right. Well, okay, fine. That means that we need Anthony Richardson to show up and have the level of efficiency and accuracy that you'd want for, let's not even say a top 12 tight end. Let's just say league average. Let's just get him to league average at this point. Everybody would be happy. So that's the second leg. But then after that, can the running game also start to come back? Because last season, Jonathan Taylor posted to one of the lower success rates from a rushing standpoint throughout the entirety of his career. And we've seen Shane Steichen, especially when he was with Philadelphia, have or at least lean a lot on the ability to marry the run and pass game concepts. So if the running game is starting to fall behind, that places more emphasis on what the passing game is going to be like. And while I know you like Michael Pittman, I like Michael Pittman, I know you're high on Josh Downs, I'm also high on Josh Downs, we still have to have some level of viability from the quarterback. So I'm thinking this is a 3-step process here. If we get we get the offensive line working, let's get the run game working in concert with the offensive line. And then after that, let's hope Anthony Richardson also shows signs of his evolution as a passer. And then afterwards, I can see that leading to the Colts being the offensive ecosystem that folks wanted to draft when Anthony Richardson first came into the league. But until that happens, until we see kind of all 3 of those things come together, it's going to be hard to bank on for 2025. But at least with the offensive line looking like it should be moving in the right direction, I have some hope for Anthony Richardson and the rest of the Colts pass catchers.
It was Stephen Holder was tweeting about this morning, who's done great work covering the Colts forever, just talking about, man, like he's like, I don't normally want to I'm paraphrasing here, but I don't overreact to training camp. But man, the Colts offense just looked dynamite the other day against the Ravens defense. And, A.D. Mitchell has been getting great reports out of camp lately. He's a guy who definitely did not have a perfect year one, but flashed some real deal ability to beat press coverage. Like, I only want that guy playing perimeter X receiver. But I do think he can play in the NFL and continue to grow and develop. It's just really easy to talk yourself into this offense if the quarterback play is there. Like if like you said, Anthony Richardson can get from, in my opinion, awful last year to average, that's a big jump for this offense. And really, it also comes down to the interior. Matt Goncalves and then Tanner Bortolini, the center. The good thing is those guys played last year, because Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, who are now together in Minnesota, those guys missed time. So they each played over 300 offensive snaps last year, according to PFF. And not terrible results. Ultimately, I thought there were games like, oh, you don't notice there's a backup offensive line here. So I think if those guys grow and develop, there is a chance that, this offensive line doesn't miss a beat. And I mean, man, again, we're showing the A.D. Mitchell clips right now. The guy is really exciting. He's very, very exciting. I don't know if I think he still needs some seasoning. And I do think that Pittman and Downs are entrenched right now as the top 2 guys, but again, if this is your 4th wide receiver, you drafted a first-round tight end, Chris, it's really, really easy to get excited about this offense. And all of the pieces outside of Jonathan Taylor are extremely affordable in fantasy.
And I think that's the key part right there. It's that last season you were having to spend a fairly decent amount of draft capital to acquire a lot of these guys. And especially now in 2025, after all the craziness that happened for Anthony Richardson in 2024, it was he took himself out because he was tired. And then we saw Joe Flacco come in and actually perform better as a passer, for the Colts. So all of those things happening and essentially putting Anthony Richardson in a spot where we don't know what his long-term career is going to look like. But now in 2025, there's no draft capital associated with him. You can get him as the last player off of the on either he's going to be on your waiver wire, or you can wait to the very last pick in your draft. So there's no risk associated with taking him. He doesn't really show any signs of development. You can cut him. So there's less risk involved. So I think if you were to be able to hit on a guy like Anthony Richardson, we've seen the ceiling. We've seen the upside. And if this offensive line gives him that extra beat to take more of those shots downfield to A.D. Mitchell, so much the better in my book.
Look, honestly, again, these guys, maybe not Richardson because we haven't seen a consistent good NFL player out of Richardson yet, but a lot of these guys make sense when we get to like looking for a rebound, looking for a bounce back, because we know that Pittman, we know that Downs, we know that Jonathan Taylor, like these guys are good NFL players. You should be interested in like, hey, the hype was there, the overhype was there for these guys last year. Mm-hmm. Maybe they can kick it around this year again because it could be a good ecosystem with this offensive line. I love that call there. That's a really good one. Let's move to the next section here. Let's talk through draft blueprint for success number 2. That is win September, a.k.a. start fast. This is a pure Scott Pianowski. It's a hit, okay? It's the greatest hit from Scott Pianowski's playbook, and I have said over and over again, when I was young, when I was idealistic, I was all about, hey, whatever. I'm all about upside, baby. I'll win in the weeks that matter, but the reality is, Chris, we all love best ball content. I love best ball content. We all love playing best ball. But I think best ball brain has seeped into redraft strategy where the weeks that matter, week 16, weeks 15, 16, 17, like that's what it's all about. But the reality is, while finishing strong is important, so is starting fast. In 2022, during the fantasy season on Yahoo, 87.1% of teams that started 5-0 made their fantasy playoffs. Among 4-1 starters, 71.8% of teams advanced. Once you get down to 3-2, it can kind of go either way. 50% of teams made the playoffs. In 2023, the advantage was even greater for 5-0 squads in Yahoo public leagues. 90.9% of those teams made the playoffs. So you know how it's great to position yourself for the weeks that matter? Start hot in September, baby. So win September. Once you do, everything else is going to get much easier. So again, easier said than done, Chris, but we went over some examples. Again, some of them are in the article. Some are in the Guillotine League pod with Justin Boone early this week. But I think Chuba Hubbard has a great early season schedule. Do I maybe want to bump up Chuba Hubbard ahead of some players in the tier that he is in my running back rankings that, like Breece Hall, who I'm not all that sure about. And Breece Hall goes ahead of Chuba Hubbard. I think I'll give Chuba Hubbard the bump there because he's another guy that has a good offensive line. So these are the sort of decisions, Chris, that I think fantasy managers can make to get themselves off to that hot start. A healthy running back who profiles as a workhorse and look at the early season schedule. Jaguars, Cardinals, Falcons, Patriots. That's pretty damn good. So how do you feel about the hot start to September versus the fast finish, and any players you think can help people get off to hot starts?
No, I completely agree with that approach because I think a lot of folks do have that best ball brain. And let's say, for instance, you get into your draft and you want to get Lamar Jackson, you want to get Josh Allen, you want to get one of those elite quarterbacks. Well, unfortunately, for those two examples, they play each other in week 1. And both have tough defenses. So it might be you find yourself reenacting the scene from Anchorman where it's, I immediately regret this decision. Because you have those quarterbacks and everybody else wants those quarterbacks. But that week 1 outing is something that's going to be tough. You don't know if Lamar Jackson will, whether it's the rushing or passing or same thing with Josh Allen, if they'll be able to come through for you in that very first week. So I completely understand why trying to understand or take a look at what those early season schedules are so you can make better decisions as a fantasy manager. At least for me, one guy that sticks out, and I like all the picks that you had there. Emeka Egbuka is one that absolutely sticks out, especially with Chris Godwin's injury timeline, the early season schedule for the Bucs. I think he sticks out as an easy one to target. I'll go throw one out for you right now, and I know that you and I both have had issues with his particular deployment. But what about Marvin Harrison Jr.? First few weeks. All right, so it's the Saints, it's the Panthers. Now I know they have to go up against the 49ers defense in week 3, but out of the 29 wide receivers with a 20% target share, Marvin Harrison Jr. did have one of the highest average depths of target, then was just behind George Pickens and Calvin Ridley. We didn't see a lot of him being able to work in the slot, but we know what that particular, his target share and his ability to create in contested catch situations. So going up against some of those light defenses in the first couple of weeks, we could be seeing a scenario where if people try and take the plunge in the, let's say, 3rd, 4th round and drafting a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., the early season returns might be something of what we were expecting in 2024, and we could see that in 2025. But I want to toss that out there and see what you think about MHJ.
Really interesting toss out here, Chris, and one that I did not see it. I actually had him pegged as a name that we were going to talk about in the rebound section, but let's just talk about him here, and we can skip it then because, by the way, you mentioned that Niners matchup in Week 3. I don't know if you've looked at the Niners secondary lately, but it's not the same unit, right? It is. Charvarius Ward is gone. He's in Indianapolis now. I really like that signing. That's really interesting for them as like a perimeter man coverage corner. You know, Diamador Lenore, Malik Mustafa had a really good rookie year. He tore his ACL. Might not be starting the season as a safety. This is not it's not the same defense that it used to be, and it's been a defense that's slipping of late. I think Robert Saleh being back there is a good bit of news for them, of course. Like, he's a really good defensive coach, but still, they're not like the same set it and forget it. This is a badass Niners defense like when they were competing for Super Bowls. So that might not even be that favorable of a matchup. I think the interesting thing about Harrison is that he's locked in as an every down player. We know that, I mean, even Trey McBride last year, who saw a 33% share of the first read targets in Arizona, I think there's a chance that he could lose like 3 or 4 percentage points to Marvin Harrison Jr. and still be number one among tight ends in first read target share. And he's also a guy that, like, again, Harrison can just get more looks. I think he's going to be moved around the field a little bit more this year. I think there's no chance that they run him out as an 80-80 outside on the line of scrimmage player. And honestly, Chris, again, this is going to transition us into the topic we're going to talk about across the break. Like, I think he's a guy that can rebound because he's good at football. You know, I know that some people will maybe question that, but based on the reception perception data with him, he's a guy who performed really well against press man coverage and was a solid zone beater as well. So I just think he needs to get like a little bigger, stronger, which he's done in the offseason, and can win more of those contested catches. So I didn't see this one coming, but he does have a pretty interesting early season schedule and has very bankable volume. It just kind of comes down to the Kyler Murray of it all, which is always the thing I get a little hung up on. Where are you at with Kyler?
I mean, I agree with you there. I just wish that for Kyler and also for Marvin Harrison, they would just give me more of the gimmies, right? I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. only had 28 slot targets throughout the entirety of 2024. I mean, for a guy that we already know is going to get the wide receiver one workload on that within that passing attack, give me some of the easy shots. I mean, we talk about Jamar Chase and some of the other wide receivers that we typically see getting drafted in the first round of being able to move across the formation, being moved into the slot. I mean, Jamar Chase being able to move into the slot was a lot of what allowed him to reach the Triple Crown heights that he had just this past season. So even if, and I'm not saying that Harrison Jr. has to be or deployed just like Jamar Chase, but give me a little bit more. It's almost the same scenario where we were talking about Anthony Richardson going from the basement level accuracy level to just league average. I'm not asking Marvin Harrison Jr. to become Jamar Chase, but give me something that's a little bit more than that. Give me a 15% like slot rate, a 20% slot rate, something more than what we were seeing in 2024 that would allow me to have a bit more confidence, not just about his fantasy production or what he would mean to me on my team, but also how he can be more effective to the Cardinals passing game. Because really right now, from an interior standpoint, if Kyler Murray does try and go across the middle of the field, what's his primary option? Right now, it's just Trey McBride. We're not the Cardinals passing game isn't asking Michael Wilson to do the same thing. Both him and Marvin Harrison Jr. They act like sacrificial X receivers in some cases. So I would say that if we start to get a bit more of Harrison moving inside and out, that would allow Kyler Murray to pull him into the higher efficiency that we've seen throughout pockets of his career already. So I think with that, like, hopefully Drew Petzing tries to move him a bit more and allow him to do a bit more as a receiver. But until then, again, I understand people having some of their doubts about Harrison Jr., but that early season schedule, I mean, I can't deny the potential for him to at least have a top 12 outing in both of those first 2 weeks.
It's a really interesting call. And you again, this is why you're on here to kind of test my priors here a little bit for this blueprint piece, because he wasn't somebody I considered, again, he more of like needs a reboot, needs a bounce back type. And I do think he needs different deployment, and he needs Kyler Murray to just drop back in the pocket like I'm sorry to say, big boy, and push it over the middle of the field. Like, we do need to see that out of Kyler. But to your point about just the early season start, and again, if you're trying to win September, it might not look like Marvin Harrison Jr. is that type of player, but you mentioned the schedule. Also, like, we know what he is. We know what the environment, and I think he can be better in year two as an individual player, and was really good even still as a rookie. We know what the offensive structure looks like. just the other, if you're hunting wide receivers in this area of the draft, the other guys that go around him, Terry McLaurin, we don't even, I mean, who knows what kind of shape is he going to be in to start the season? He's currently in the middle of a hold out, hold in, whatever you want to call it. Mike Evans, that's how I think Mike Evans is locked and loaded to start the season. But Devontae Adams, Matthew Stafford, we got a big question there. DJ Moore, what does his new role look like in Chicago? DK Metcalf in friggin' Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers in a situation I'm trying to avoid. So again, like maybe Marvin Harrison, if you're shopping in this tier, like actually has a pretty good situation to get off to a hot start. But Chris, this gives us a great point to transition to our third topic, which is how we deal with injuries, how we deal with rebounds. We're going to talk about that right after this quick break. All right, we are back. Chris Allen and I are continuing to run through the 2025 Draft Day Blueprint, everything you need for success for your fantasy season. Let's get into Draft Blueprint success number 3. Provide proper context when you're looking for players to rebound and how to deal with injuries. Let's quickly talk injuries here to start, Chris. Again, this is another Scott Pianowski gem that has become a hard and fast truth for me as I have gotten older. Injuries will find you during the fantasy season. You don't have to go looking for them in the draft. It is always tempting, Chris, to look at that name that you know and a player who at their best can outproduce many of their peers, and you see him on the draft board and you just want to take him. You want to stick him on your bench and you want to wait it out and imagine this powerhouse starting lineup in some mythical week 6 world. You think you're getting a discount, but oftentimes we don't know when that quote at their best is going to come. And you ultimately end up catching the falling knife. 3 examples this year, and I want to know what you're doing with these 3 players. Joe Mixon at running back, and Brandon Ayuk and Chris Godwin. You know 2 of my favorite wide receivers, but Ayuk and Godwin at wideout. So what are we doing? I have a very easy answer with these 3, but I want to hear if you're willing to stick your neck out for any of these 3 guys.
I'm willing to stick my neck out for all 3 of those guys. There's no question me about for Chris Godwin specifically. I know that we already talked about the loss of Liam Cohen and how that can potentially impact the Bucks passing game. But seeing Godwin attain, I'd say, like one of the career best from a yards per route run standpoint, saw him move back into the slot a bit more in 2024 to play that complement to Mike Evans. If he comes back and we start to see a bit more, we have some level of confidence about his health, like once he comes back. And I know a lot of folks will say you have to wait until the year after the year. For injury purposes. But for how he was playing throughout the start of 2024, I'm willing to at least take a shot on him and see if he can get back to that. Because we already know that the Bucks passing game, they're going to lean a bit more on Baker Mayfield's arm versus whatever the talent of Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, right? I mean, it's not going to be like this offense is going to shift back into being a more conservative type of offense. So if I know that the passing volume is going to be stable, or at the very least I can project that. And I can also project that assuming Chris Godwin is going to be in the lineup or he's going to be active, he's going to be out there running routes, then I should be able to project a decent level of volume or enough volume that I can at least try and ride out having him on my bench for a few weeks. But hopefully over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we start to get a better idea of what that timeline is going to look like. But at least, again, looking at his projection from last year, not just the targets, but also the efficiency that Godwin was able to generate off of that opportunity, at least leads me to believe that he's one of the guys that I would be able to stick my neck out. I know we're not getting any sort of injury discount, but looking at how the Bucks play and how Godwin fits into that offense, like he's one of the guys that I would want to target for sure.
Chris Godwin last year in reception perception, you could argue his best season, 75.2% success rate versus man coverage. That was the best that he's had since 2020. You know, he tore up his knee in 2021. 83.7% success rate versus zone. That was actually the best of his career in reception perception because he was really being deployed as that power slot receiver in Liam Cohen's offense. I hear you on the Godwin optimism. I hear you on just being excited about him. And man, like I people that subscribe to this show during the year last year know that like I was ripped up by that injury, bro. I mean, that tore me up. That was just at the end of
Back
the
to
game
work, John.
they had already pretty much lost. Yeah, just sucked. It just sucked. But and you could even see it as he rode off the cart. You know, he's just like, damn, again. Like that was the vibe, and yeah, that's how it felt. So I want to bet on Chris Godwin. I think actually, to me, I will be willing to bet in 2026, the year after the year. Mike Evans could be moving on. Emeka Egbuka, they understand like where they can deploy him and Chris Godwin together. Jalen McMillan, I think, is a good number 3, stretch the defense out, but not a true like target earner. I just have a tough time with how good the wide receiver board is, Chris. And honestly, this is the same with Brandon Ayuk too. I have Brandon Ayuk as my wide receiver 51. Like, I mean, if you're using my rankings, you're probably not getting Brandon Ayuk, who is, like, when he is right in the 2023 season, that was a top 10 NFL receiver, like more like top 8. He was that good. Again, expert consensus rank of wide receiver 48. I'm a few spots behind. There's guys behind him that like in his same tier, Rashad Bateman, Cedric Tillman. Like I might rather take the shot on like see what those guys look like right off the rip in week 1, week 2, week 3. Because I just don't even know when Ayuk is going to play. Now, obviously news can change. Like we could get good reports on Godwin and Ayuk and I'm ready to, you know, just say, hey, never mind. And honestly, same with Joe Mixon too. Like right now, I think if you're drafting today, Joe Mixon to me, Chris, and maybe you disagree, is just an untouchable asset. Like you can't take him because you have no idea. Like he's on the NFI, the non-football injury list. What the hell? How did he get hurt? Like what's going on here? Non-football injury. We have no idea. So to me, like you can't take him right now. But let's maybe reconvene on August 25th and we have more clarity. Maybe then you bump these guys back up. But with the receivers, I just have a bad feeling like they're missing the first 4 weeks. And to me, like I just think the receiver board is so deep. I'm not like too tempted, even though those guys at their best are like top 10 NFL receivers.
Well, here's the difference in how I'm viewing the difference between Chris Godwin and Brandon Ayuk. Both completely fair in the idea that both of them are going to miss time, and we have really no idea when they're going to get back and how they're going to look once they do get back. But for the Bucs, as I was saying beforehand, from a pass rate standpoint, we know that they're going to lean on Baker Mayfield's arm. Last season alone, the Bucs ranked like they were top 6, top 7 in pass rate over expectation, which really tries to measure how much you're dropping back to pass relative to the game situation, like where you're at on the field, what down, what distance, what the game situation is. Are you ahead? Are you behind? So on and so forth. So for the Bucs to be that much above average in terms of how much they're passing, at least for Chris Godwin specifically, that would lead me to at least have some level of optimism about his workload once he gets back, assuming he gets back. But now let's contrast that with the 49ers. Not to say that they're more conservative, but they're sitting around top 10, top 12. I mean, it was good to see Brock Purdy start to emerge and evolve a bit as a passer. But we know that Kyle Shanahan runs more of a balanced type of attack. And then also let's look at the types of routes that Brandon Ayuk is running. I mean, he does tend to operate a bit more on the perimeter, higher average depth of target or farther downfield. So he does catch tougher passes, at least relative to what Chris Godwin is, the types of routes and catches that Chris Godwin has to make. So between those two, I could say that I can see Chris Godwin getting more of the gimmies, right? The shorter A-dot type of targets, or against lesser coverage relative to what Ayuk would see. So that's where, at least for me, I'm willing to take the bet on Godwin. Whereas for Ayuk, he's going to be seeing less volume. He also has other potential targets that work across the middle of the field, like a Ricky Pearsall, like a George Kittle, like a Christian McCaffrey, that take a lot of those easier looks. Then I can say for Brandon Ayuk, yeah, brother, I'll catch you in 2026. But for Godwin, he does get some of those high leverage targets that makes it easier for me to see him having at least useful fantasy production in 2025.
All right, so let's talk through how to deal with rebound players, because you know how this is, Chris. People say, he burned me last year. Never going to take him again. Never going to take him. That is okay. Here's my perspective. People are free to live their life however they want, manage these teams. That's an emotional response, and it leads to missed opportunities. The quick and easy rule that I tend to follow is this: if a player is in their prime years and not coming back from a significant injury, so like the Ayuk thing is a part of this, right? Because technically in his prime years, and he is a proven good talent. Ayuk is a proven good talent, but again, the injury kind of caveat here. So if a player's in their prime years, not coming back from a significant injury, and is a proven good talent, aka look at something beyond just the fantasy points, all right, when we're trying to identify who's a good talent, you should almost never put that guy on your do not draft list, okay? Because fortune favors the open-minded. So, Chris, throw out some guys here that maybe people have you think have proven themselves that people are maybe being a little too hard on right now.
We talked about him a bit earlier. I would say Michael Pittman is one that folks have probably dropped down their rankings because of the injury concerns from last season. Now, I get probably the primary concern is the Anthony Richardson of it all, and I completely get that. But here, I'll give you a list of names that Michael Pittman is currently being drafted around. 2 receivers going ahead of Michael Pittman. Hollywood Brown, currently not practicing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and also we didn't see him until the playoffs last year. And Quentin Johnston, and you know what? Never mind. We're not going to get into that. And players getting drafted behind him. All right, now one of the players being drafted behind Michael Pittman is your guy, Rashad Bateman. But past him, Trey Harris, Jack Besh. I mean, this is the range of wide receivers that we're equating to Michael Pittman. This is the same wide receiver the past 3 seasons, 24.4% target share, 28.6% target share, 22.6% target share. These are wide receiver 1, low-end wide receiver 1, but at least relative to where we would want to draft some of these guys, this is legitimate workload. This is the type of volume that you would want to see out of a guy that's drafted, let's say, in the not maybe first, second round, but maybe the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. And you can get him around guys that you would assume to be wide receiver 3s. So for me, I get that, of course, the back injury that he sustained last year, couple that with the Anthony Richardson demise or whatever you want to call it, would at least put enough uncertainty in Michael Pittman for 2025 that you would want to push him down your ranks. But compared to where he's being drafted around, the wide receivers that we're talking about that are going around Michael Pittman, come on, guys. Like we have to move him up a bit from a value standpoint, just looking at the amount of volume that we should expect to see out of, let's say, a legitimate wide receiver 1 in Michael Pittman.
It's so tough because I think people are definitely looking at the upside of guys that are going ahead there. And I like all those players. Like Khalil Shakir, I think does need to bump down just because of the injury. Obviously, like the expert consensus ranks that we've shown here do not really reflect the fact that Khalil Shakir's got a high ankle sprain. Like I really want to take Ricky Pearsall, but you could definitely make an argument to me that Pittman should be going ahead of Deebo Samuel, that him and Josh Downs should be like a total tie. Jaden Reed, I love Jaden Reed, but he's got concerns in his profile. So to me, I do think that Michael Pittman is a good one. He definitely burned people last year. He was going very, very high, and he was not the most productive Colts receiver. But again, also have to remember, he was dealing with a back injury last year. Oftentimes, these guys burned you because they were playing through an injury, which brings me to the guy I want to get your thought process on. Kenneth Walker is a guy that I think is maybe a little bit polarizing in the fantasy football community, but I think he's really well set up to rebound for folks this year, Chris, because I think is a great fit in the outside zone scheme that Clint Kubiak is bringing here. Now, he has dealt with some injuries during training camp, but I think he got back to practice today, so that should be good there. Walker's always a guy I've struggled with a little bit because I think the gap in ADP between Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker is kind of tough, right? Because I think Charbonnet is a pretty solid player, but Walker, it does have a lot of upside as a pick in the kind of mid-range RB2 zone. So do you think this is a player who could have a fantasy rebound this year?
Oh, I agree for Ken Walker for sure. And I understand some of the potential uncertainty about the foot injury that you were just mentioning, but looking at his efficiency throughout 2024, one of the things that I look at for running backs is forced missed tackle rate. So it's the ability to essentially shed that first defender and see if you can pick up an extra 2, 3, 4 yards or whatever the case may be. One of the things I was able to find in some of the research is that forced missed tackle rate does correlate at least somewhat to explosive rushing rate. And that's what we would want for a lot of running backs. The Jahmyr Gibbs of the world, the Saquon Barkleys, the Bijan Robinsons, guys that can turn a 2 to 3 yard gain into a 10 to 15 yard gain or more. And actually, Kenneth Walker, when he was healthy, actually led the league in forced missed tackle rate, 0.39 forced missed tackle rate, which is actually one of the higher rates that we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years. So if we can get a full season out of Ken Walker, and also in this zone rushing scheme that we're expecting to get out of the Seahawks this year, I mean, yeah, I understand that Sam Darnold might be a decent step down from Geno Smith, and we'll see whatever we can get out of the passing game now that it's led by JSN and Cooper Kupp. But if Ken Walker is the one that's still going to be essentially their RB1 going into week 1, I would at least bet on the efficiency from Ken Walker and say that he's a guy that I'm willing to let 2024 be 2024 and focus on what his future could be. And based off his ancillary metrics, I say it's pretty bright for him.
I like it. He is, again, somebody that I've really warmed up to throughout the process, somebody that I'm pretty excited to draft in my first 4-round plan. Like if Kenneth Walker gets to the 4th round, I think he's a really good early 4th round pick there. If he's at the end of the 3rd, I would consider him. I would consider him over another one last guy before we get into my guys here, which is a fun topic that I think everybody's excited to hear about. Breece Hall. Am I being hypocritical?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being hypocritical and kind of saying I don't really know if I buy the full bounce back for Breece Hall? Look, nobody's asking you to believe he's going to be a top 5 player in fantasy like he was drafted as last year. But and I do think he is a proven good talent. He's proven good NFL play before. He's healthy right now. But I'm a little concerned just about maybe the Braylon Allen of it all, kind of eating into the touches here. I'm concerned about the pass catching upside with Justin Fields under center, and just how many damn points are the Jets going to score this year is another thing that keeps me kind of a little bit pessimistic about some of their players when they're going really, really high in fantasy. So Breece Hall, we showed him earlier, is the running back 13 in consensus rankings. I'm a little bit below that. Am I being hypocritical in my Breece Hall stance?
No, I don't think you're being hypocritical. I share the same concerns about the Jets offense as a whole, and actually noted it in a piece about my quarterback draft strategy that should be up on Yahoo right now. Go ahead and check it out if you get a chance, because let's look at the red flags. Tanner Engstrom, new OC for the Jets, the guy that couldn't get the job after Ben Johnson left, so they went out and instead they hired outside. He didn't go to with Ben Johnson to Chicago, so he gets the Jets job. Okay, that's something of a concern, but all right. Let's also think that, well, what would Engstrom try and do to help Justin Fields evolve as a passer? Assumption of rational coaching, let's see if we can pull on some of those play action levers. Let's see if we can pull on some of those RPO levers. I mean, at least for play action specifically, those are the things that helped Jared Goff be better. I mean, allow him to deal with pressure, allow him to push the ball to, or at least get the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, insert name here. So, but still, for Justin Fields, just this past season, 29th in success rate on play action concepts on early downs. I mean, this is also the guy that was Fields was also throwing just around 5 air yards per attempt on a lot of those passing concepts. So if we're not seeing a level of efficiency that we would try and map to how Engstrom would try and call plays, I do have a lot of concern about how all this is going to work in concert together. What type of concepts is Engstrom going to try and get to Fields in order to make him get the ball over to Garrett Wilson? And the same thing goes for Breece Hall. So I think that even though Breece Hall has shown himself to be something of an efficient pass catcher in the past, and we know that the explosive rushing rate is also a talent that he has in his back pocket, but if Justin Fields is incapable of sustaining drives and incapable of continuing to push the ball or keep the Jets offense on the field, you're already hearing in practice they're struggling against their own defense. How's it going to work once they get out on the field? So I do think that I don't think you're being hypocritical at all when saying that we should at least pump the brakes on Breece Hall this year.
Yeah, still in a tier of guys that I like drafting at the running back position. He's just the last guy in the tier to me. So he's not a full fade. Yeah. Again, I don't want to be fully hypocritical, but definitely a guy that, again, I've got a few spots lower. Let's get into my guys here, Chris, because, again, draft blueprint for success number 4. Identify your guys, get your guys. These are the players that you think are going to outkick their ADP and current fantasy expectations. As I say in the article, we are not going to sit here and do performative nonsense and talk about, Drake London, Nico Collins. These are my guys. You know, everyone knows those guys are good. Okay. I don't know where the hell that came from. No idea what that was. I was trying to be fancy. Please, international listeners, UK listeners, I apologize. But I'm not going to give the whole list here because go read the article on yahoosports.com. Full team effort by Jason, Mo, Ben on an editorial staff to put this thing together. The graphics team did great with the artwork. So if you want to know all my guys, go read the damn article. There's a lot more than what we're going over on this podcast as well. Full positional breakdowns in there. But here's what we're going to do, Chris. We're going to list off the guys that we wrote on the sheet, and then we're going to really make the case for one. As the guest, I will let you go first here.
All right. So looking at the list, I think the one we already talked about Egbuka. I mean, we said he's going to be solid. All right. How about this? I'll make the case for Jordan Mason. He's the one that probably
No,
sticks
wait,
out
wait,
to
wait.
me
No, I
as
want you to your three that you've got here on the list that you
okay.
wrote
I'll
down.
say the one that sticks out for
To
me.
say
Okay,
these
I'll pick from
three
my
and make
list.
the case. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say Jacoby Myers. He's going to be my guy
Okay.
that I've been trying to draft like more often than not because he does fall in that realm of the draft where I'm looking for volume. I'm looking for at least some of the bankable metrics that we can attach to wide receivers that you would want to have that can have them outkick their ADP. And Jacoby Myers has that. I mean, just last season alone, 25% target share. Now, the catch rate or the catchable rate of targets for him last year, because, I mean, look at some of the quarterbacks that were throwing to him last year. And yeah, 73%. But let's assume with Geno Smith there that that's going to improve. But now, if he's going to be essentially the de facto wide receiver one for the Raiders, of course, Brock Bowers is going to get his. I can see a scenario where Jacoby Myers, just from where he's being used at, around a 10, 11-yard average depth of target, which what you would want for a wide receiver, shows that they're being used downfield, but also can be used in the short and intermediate parts of the field as well. Myers sticks out to me as the wide receiver that at ADP, I can see him being drafted in the 8th, 9th round, but could wind up being a 6-ish round value by the end of the season.
Brother, I love this call by you. Jacoby Myers is a guy who's has multiple seasons over 70% success rate versus man coverage and reception perception. Just like we talk about guys that are underrated, and there are definitely some players that are, disrespected by certain circles, whatever. Jacoby Myers might actually be the most underrated receiver in the NFL. Like, because he's just a rock solid good player. And fantasy managers want nothing to do with him. Okay, we showed on the screen earlier. I thought I have Jacoby Myers at wide receiver 35, which is ahead of his ADP, which is 113th. But his consensus ranking is wide receiver 36. People are saying draft this guy. He's gonna give you more production than a 113th overall player. I like Jack Besh. I think Dante Thornton can be there to clear out space and kind of do some sacrificial extra receiver stuff, and maybe dunk on folks down the field every now and again. But Myers is gonna eat targets in this offense, man, because he's the clear cut best wide receiver, most established veteran. I agree with you. This is a great call. He's kind of a boring my guy, right? Because he's not look, the dudes on the list in the article for me are, Emeka Egbuka, we've talked about a ton. Rome Odunze, people won't be surprised. These, young ascending wide receivers. You're you know what? Yeah. I've seen this guy play football. I've seen it be good. I've seen it be good with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. It's going to be a lot better with Geno Smith. So great call by you there. You were trying to take Jordan Mason. The reason I'm no, Chris, use one from your name.
That's your guy.
I kind of want to talk about Jordan Mason here as one of my guys. Again, I've got a bunch in the article people can go check out, but I really want to highlight Jordan Mason here because he to me stands out. When I'm not waiting on running back very often, but I've got this guy as running back 29, which is well ahead of his ADP right now. Jordan Mason has been labeled the 1B back to Aaron Jones this offseason by the coaching staff. I kind of hate the 1A, 1B thing because you're just finding a new and creative way to say number 2 because guess what? B comes after A in the alphabet. You're just trying to be nicer about it. And I'm all about being nice and complimentary players, okay? So that's fine. But again, Aaron Jones, the 1A back maybe, Jordan Mason, the 1B. Here's the thing, though. I think this team is going to run the ball a lot more this year, okay? And they've been signaling that to us with their way they've approached this offseason. Trading for Jordan Mason, giving him a contract extension, adding Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, and Will Fries to the interior of their offensive line. The second thing that signals to us, Chris, they added some beef there. Those are 3 big human beings. The Colts ran a lot of gap scheme runs. Obviously, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries played in Indianapolis. That's something that's important here because the Vikings, as they've wanted to transition their run game, think about the Rams and Sean McVay, where Kevin O'Connell has come from. They mastered an outside zone, and then they decide, hey, it's time to mix it up. It's time to put some more gap scheme runs into our run game. I think that's where the Vikings are at right now. And Jordan Mason, according to Fantasy Points data, 5.65 yards per carry on gap scheme runs in 2024. I also think he could be the goal line option. And then he also, we know this has massive contingent value. If Aaron Jones ever misses time, then he becomes, forget 1A, 1B, he becomes the one in a backfield for an offense that new quarterback, but still should be very good. So Chris, I think once you get out of the top 30 backs, this is the first name for me that I'm like, I'm trying to get this guy, put him on my bench and see what happens.
Yeah, and I keep trying, like every draft that I do, whether it's a mock or whatever, I keep trying to find a way to not draft him because it's like, well, what if I'm wrong? But it's still the same way that I
Yeah,
landed
sure.
on Myers as a guy that I would want to draft. It's the same type of traits that I'm seeing out of Jordan Mason. It's like trying to find those statistics, those metrics that he was able to highlight last season that at least are bankable for 2025. And the one that stuck out to me the most was during that 9-ish week period where we didn't see Christian McCaffrey on the field, who was out there running routes, who was at least out of the 49ers backfield that was capable of taking on some of that Christian McCaffrey role. And it wasn't Isaac Guerrero, like for that 2.5-ish month stretch. I mean, it was Jordan Mason that had a 52% route rate for the 49ers. It was Jordan Mason that had at least a 5% target share relative to the 2% that Guerrero was getting. So if the 49ers actually saw him as a potential running back that could replace, at least again, a piece of what CMC is. And now he moves over to a Kevin O'Connell led offense, a guy that was passing to running backs and having a high-end pass rate over expectation offense with Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. I mean, yeah, I will buy into that situation along with the talent that we saw from Jordan Mason just this past season. So I'm completely with you on that one. I think regardless of what your draft strategy is, whether it's heavy running back or zero RB or whatever the case, I think Mason fits into almost every draft strategy, just given his particular ADP.
I love that. Yeah, it doesn't. If you're waiting on running back, he's a guy you should definitely be targeting. But even if you go heavy running back, add this guy because I think he's going to be a great bye week fill in at the very least. Again, like a touchdown threat in an offense that we expect to be pretty good. We're going to take our final break. We come back on the other side. Chris and I are going to give you the one player that we do not want to leave our drafts without right after this. Welcome to the Fantasy Film Room presented by Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL. For today's Film Room, we are offering our final draft blueprint for success. This is the guy we do not want to leave drafts without. We want to get this guy in every draft this August. And the reason that we're doing this for the Film Room section, Chris, is because we're not just going to sit here and be like, well, based on his ADP, this guy's a real value, or there's fantasy points over this, that, and the other. No. We're talking about some real deal football takes here in the Fantasy Film Room because we have put our eyeballs, we've watched these players, and we know that they're good. So, Chris, tell me, who is the one player that you want in every single draft this August?
Jalen Waddle. Give me Jalen Waddle. I don't care that last season was a complete disaster for him. I want to see a full season of him healthy. I want to see a full season. I think everybody wants to see a full season of Tua Tagovailoa healthy. But it's also the same offense that was passing more often, almost 39 dropbacks per game for Tua once he came back. That passing pie grew. We saw Jalen Waddle still have a fairly decent air yard share. And of course, no Jonnu Smith that's going to be involved. And I mean, this is more subjective than anything else, but with all the chatter that Tyreek Hill's been putting out there, how much is he going to really be involved in this passing game in 2025 anyway? So I'd say the beef is more qualitative than anything else, but still, we're not too far behind from seeing Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill be top 10 wide receivers. That was 2022. If we can see both of them be healthy this upcoming season, he's a guy that I do not want to leave my drafts with because I know that the Miami passing game is something that we've tried to target in years past. Just got to get the health part in check, but I believe that's going to be the case for this upcoming season.
I love it. I'm ahead of consensus on Jalen Waddle too. I really think, again, from like a structure perspective, Nick Westbrook-Akine might be a sneaky signing for this team because I don't think people realize this, Chris. Jalen Waddle has taken over 80% of his snaps on the line of scrimmage each of the last 2 years. Ever since Tyreek Hill has been there, that has been going up because he has to run like the routes against press coverage because they're moving Tyreek Hill around, doing all the fun stuff. What if they start to do more of that with Jalen Waddle? Because Tyreek Hill is making Mike McDaniel's life miserable, and he's like, hey, I'm not catering to the 31-year-old receiver anymore. I'm going to cater to the young guy that we gave a big contract extension to, who's having a great camp. And Nick Westbrook-Akina takes some of that like sacrificial X receiver duties away. So I love the idea of Jalen Waddle as a potential upside bet, a guy that we again talk about. This is the perfect rebound candidate, Chris, a guy that we've seen be good at football, and now is just going to be a little bit more efficient this year because of the surrounding variables. I'll stick in the X receiver ballpark, but a guy that I don't think is going to be very sacrificial this year. And God help me, Chris, I do not feel comfortable with the fact that George Pickens is the one player I will not leave drafts without this year. I mean, perhaps the most enigmatic wide receiver in the NFL, but I'm all in on Pickens this year. I think he is the most mispriced player in fantasy right now, still going outside the top 30 receivers, right around like wide receiver 31. I've got him ranked almost 12 spots ahead of that. Again, I'm uncomfortably high on the George Pickens situation. And again, I'm telling you, man, it makes me uncomfortable. But listen, the biggest reason, again, this is like, get in the film room here. George Pickens took a big step forward last year as an individual player with a career best 72.8% success rate versus man, 77.6% success rate versus press, which is an 83rd percentile score and reception perception. Really took a big step forward as a man press beater. He's a perfect fit in the vacated X receiver role for the Dallas Cowboys. And like, again, this is a guy that's put it in the box score. He ranks 17th among wide receivers in yards per route run over the last 2 years combined. Now his routes, his targets, his catchable targets are all going to go up in a likely pass heavy offense with Dak Prescott. I think he could be one of, if not the most productive number 2 receivers in the league, as long as he's locked in. He's got every incentive to be locked in. So Chris, at times I've been mixed on Pickens, certainly in fantasy and even in real life. But this year, after the improvement that I watched last year, and again, him being in a new situation, I'm uncomfortably high on George Pickens. I want to get, if he's going to be going outside the top 5 rounds like he is at times right now, I will be getting him in every single draft.
Well, I mean, for the folks that are watching this live or catch this at some point later on, I mean, y'all have seen hopefully y'all have seen like the shirt that I'm wearing. I mean, I have to represent like my Bengals. And unfortunately, George Pickens has been a thorn in my side with him being in the AFC North for so many years now. But so now I can say, great, I think he's an excellent wide receiver, and I'm happy to see him flourish somewhere else. But let's look at how he fits within the Dallas Cowboys offense. You already made the point that without having a guy like Michael Gallup out there on the field for Dak Prescott, they have been missing some of that vertical element to their passing game. And I know a lot of Cowboys fans are probably will agree with me on this, that they're going to tight window throw or contested catch that Dak Prescott won't turn down. So if you have a guy like George Pickens that has been able to take on a lot of that role and be able to moss defenders and be able to operate in those contested catch situations, also be able to operate downfield. I mentioned him earlier as being one of the wide receivers along with Marvin Harrison Jr. that was averaging 12, 13 average, what his average depth of target was just this past season. He fits what Dak Prescott wants for this offense. So I can see a scenario where it's George Pickens on the outside, CeeDee Lamb continues to operate across from the slot across the middle of the field, and we'll see what happens with any of the ancillary players, Jake Ferguson, so on and so forth. So I'm with you. I want to be overweight on a guy like George Pickens just because where he goes in drafts, you do want to continue to swing for upside at wide receiver, and where he's going in drafts right now, he fits that archetype receiver that you want to have as your wide receiver 3 flex type of play to really give you that punch to your squad.
Yeah, I love it. The weekly hammer. I mean, you mentioned your Bengals. I've been saying this since he got traded. Why can't he be the T. Higgins to CeeDee Lamb's Jamar Chase? You know, the move around number 1 alpha receiver. Those two guys line up on the same side of the field, creating mismatches. I'm very excited about it. And again, uncomfortably high on the entire Dallas Cowboys offense this year, but certainly on the George Pickens situation as a wide receiver 3 upside flex. Chris, this has been fantastic. Loved having you on the show today. I love the fact that it is still 28 days of fantasy, people. If you have not noticed online, a little reminder, we are celebrating 28 years of Yahoo Fantasy with 28 days of fantasy promotions. Today's announcement is paid leagues. With the increased demand for higher stakes fantasy competition, Yahoo Fantasy is excited to introduce a new $2,500 entry fee tier for public prize leagues. This new option offers a $12,500 first place prize and fills the gap between our existing $1,000 and $5,000 prize leagues. More formats, more stakes, more ways to compete. It is all available to you when you play on Yahoo Fantasy. So, dear listener, dear viewer, what are you waiting for? Chris, that is going to do it for today's show. Appreciate the hell out of you, buddy. Thank you so much for hanging with us.
I mean, anytime. I mean, I can't wait to come back and chat with you more throughout the season. And of course, I think we'll be seeing each other this weekend up in Canton. So looking forward to the festivities this weekend. And of course, what the upcoming season is going to unfold for us. So now, happy to be here, man.
No doubt, man. I'm so excited to have you here on the team. I'm excited to have you on the show a bunch of times in August. And I'm very, very excited to see you in real life up there in Canton at the Fantasy Football Expo. Speaking of which, if you're going to the Fantasy Football Expo, if you see me there, come up, say hi. I would love to meet you. If we've met before, I'd love to see you again. Let's hang out. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Like I said, that is going to do it for today's show. And again, speaking of the expo, I will not be on tomorrow's show because I am traveling. I'm going to New York for some Yahoo work, and then I will be traveling right to Canton. So your boy actually has to go make a flight right now as you're watching this live. I got to get the hell out of here. Justin Boone is going to be holding down the show for me tomorrow, so he will be in the host chair. So make sure you come back and check that episode. Until then, we are out.